Film is a really great medium for people who are quite often semi or mostly illiterate, for one thing, and it's also very immediate impact. I've had old men ask me, how many toes does an elephant have? Do tusks fall off? No, they don't. You know, they don't know a lot of basic things, and they're fascinated and they want to know. But their lifestyles are also such that, you know, poor people have to work really hard and spend a lot of their living hours just getting food and getting water. A lot of people walk 15, 20 kilometers just to get water to cook with. And they haven't had time to sit and think about these things. Poaching is taking a huge toll on Kenya's wildlife. Around Tsavo National Park itself, it is estimated a minimum of 540,000 animals a year are being illegally killed. Now that can't go on. It's pretty dramatic to see how many snares there are out there. You have to see it with your own eyes. I was shocked the first time I saw it. Snares are usually set for antelope, but they often will take a lion or an elephant. It's not subsistence snaring. It's not a guy out feeding his family, in which case that would be sustainable. This is commercial. It's greed. It's poachers out killing 30 to 40 animals a night. Well, we were approached by the Kenya Wildlife Service to facilitate a bushmeat awareness program because they had identified what they're calling the bushmeat crisis. They organized it. Amara basically funded it and supported it and encouraged it. They chose 6 of the most serious poaching areas around the park and met with a local chief who organized the local elders and some of the active poachers to attend. So it would be people with influence and people who are actually doing the bad things. We had about 50 to 60 people at each community. The forums were led by the education warden from Tsavo. Started out talking about the environment. What is the environment? How are we all part of it? The Sheldrick guy would talk about the history of poaching, especially bushmeat poaching. Not just talking to people, but saying, what methods do we use to poach? How do we kill wildlife? How do we use wildlife? And the people were seeing themselves because they were making the statements, they were answering questions. The Kenya Wildlife Service research man would talk about land use policies. What are your resources in this area? It might be wildlife, might be arable land. Okay, these are what the resources are. How do we use them now? Public health officer would discuss the perils of bushmeat, the diseases you can get from it, the fact that it's not regulated. Talking about the laws, the legalities of things, and how they work and why those laws are in place. In one of the areas, they acknowledged that about 90% of the people poach. So they led it all through the whole process, and in the end of the day, 90% of you are criminals. And they hadn't thought of it like that. They went, oh yeah, this isn't right. And they also talked about if we keep poaching, they aren't going to be there anymore. We can't keep doing it. Amara has been working in these communities for 6 years now. I'm very, devoted and focused on this Savo area. They're living in a place that's just not a tenable place for humans to farm. They're trying to sustenance farm, it doesn't work. Some people do turn to poaching. Those who don't poach buy the bushmeat. Now they don't want to do that anymore. So now what we need to do is help them find alternate, sustainable, long-lasting solutions to that problem. And this year I've been very lucky to get involved with the Ross School of Business MBA program. They came to Africa, they helped assess everything Amara is doing and develop an 8 to 10 year strategy for how we can grow.
So before I went to Africa, I knew there was a problem of wildlife conservation there. I had read about it, I had talked to Lori. But when I went there, I was shocked to see the extent of the problem. This problem with wildlife conservation, it was much bigger than what we were imagining, and it was more of a people problem than anything else. And in order to solve this problem, what we really needed was to develop alternative sources of income for the people. So the next part of our project was to look at what are those alternative sources of income, what are those unique resources that these people have that can be leveraged. And one of the good ideas that Lori had, even before we went there, was to develop an elephant sanctuary around the national park, which the villagers could benefit from.
Yeah, the community from Bulia is learning something about developing a community sanctuary where livestock and wildlife coexist. So that's the reason why the community is here, to learn something new to them, how they can benefit from the resources that are available naturally.
Even though the villagers are on board that they need an alternate source of income and they don't like killing animals because they're often on the wrong side of the law, but they don't clearly see the benefits of sanctuary coming to them because they've never seen that. And they need to be educated, and they need to have someone who they trust come and speak to them and tell them that the sanctuary could actually help these villagers solve their problems, as well as conserve the wildlife. And that's where I see Amara fitting in.
The reason Savo National Park was actually formed and is as big as it is because it was not a good place for people to live. It's very, very dry, rough country, and it's only really good for wildlife. Now the population is so big and people are there. These areas that I'm talking about where we want to form these, help the people do this, are places where the elephants are already 8 months of the year. When they come into these areas where people are trying to farm and are living, they cause problems. If there's a crop, they eat it. If there are people around, they come into conflict. The KWS has to chase the elephants out again and again and again, and they come back because this is where they need to go. Because the people aren't able to live there well, it makes the most sense in the world for them to form sanctuaries there. Let the wildlife graze on these lands when they're there. They still own the land. They're not giving the land to the park. They keep the land. It's then a community-owned sanctuary. So we are working with the communities right now. We're about 50%, 80% in some areas. People are very keen to do this. We need to get more people more aware so that everyone wants to do it. That's a solution forever.
Warudi kwetu tena tuseme nini